Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this council meeting on this blustery November day, November the 1st. Welcome, everyone. I want to note that we have all of our councillors in attendance, and therefore I can call this meeting to order, knowing we have quorum. I would ask you all to join us in a moment of reflection, and as we do so, let's keep in mind the day ahead of us on November the 11th in memory of those who have given their lives to keep our freedom, and the day that holds so much meaning for so many folks. I will ask you to join me in a moment of reflection. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of an interest in any of the agenda items we have before us today? Seeing none, we will move on to announcements. I have a few, and Councillor Kentner would like to start us off today.
Okay, my pleasure. I understand that through the news that Owen Sound City Council is considering tonight an offer for the Billy Bishop Regional Airport. And I just think from what I've read in the news, this is a very, very good and exciting prospect for Owen Sound and for our municipality in which the airport is located. Including that the new owner apparently owns a number of airports around Georgian Bay and has sort of developed a tourism based on that. So
nice to hear. Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. Just two short announcements, if I may. First of all, I wanted to make sure everyone knew about the upcoming Grey Bruce virtual job fair. I know we just had our own Meaford fair, but this is a virtual fair that will be happening on November the 23rd between 2 and 7 p.m. Employer registration is open now at grey.ca/jobfair. And job seeker information will be on that site a little later on this week. There's only a few spots left for employers, so if you're interested, have a look at that. The list of positions and employers will be posted closer to the event. This is a partnership between Grey County, Bruce County, the Y Employment Services, VPI Solutions, Fort County Labour Market Planning Board, RTO7, and Georgian College, so it's going to be a big event. And you've heard me speak to this before, but Meaford Dragons will be taking place this week, November the 4th, and tickets are still available here at Meaford Hall. That event will start at 7:30, so see you there. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. You had a couple of remarks right away, quick, when we're starting our council meeting this afternoon, and I'd just like to announced November the 11th proceedings at the Cenotaph this year, very much like it was last year with the concerns of social distancing and so on. The wreaths will be pre-positioned as we did last year. There will be no marching contingent from the forces or cadets or anyone like that. Last year people were very good. They stayed back. They gave themselves some good space between one another, and we want you to do that again this year. The ceremony may be a little bit longer than last year. Last year was our quickest ceremony ever. We may be just a few minutes longer. So again, it's always the same time, 11 o'clock at the Cenotaph. And this year, I think it was written maybe in the local paper that it is a nice touch for those that have wreaths that after the official ceremony, if family members or those who've purchased a wreath to have on display, if you want to take your poppy and go forward and pin your poppy on your wreath, that'd be most welcome. So just wanted to say that at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. And in past, I think folks have just laid their poppies on the cenotaph. Is that all right with the?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And so that I have a couple of announcements, and just to follow up on that, we understand completely the need for distancing and to maintain the protocols for health reasons at this time. But this is such a special time of remembrance for many, many Canadians. And I know that we can all find our own way to pay tribute to the fallen by holding them in our hearts and observing the 2 minutes of silence on November 11th, or wherever we are, wearing our poppies and contributing that way to the work of the Legion as they move forward. The wreath for the municipality of Meaford will be laid, as Councillor Bell has said, before the event. So just wanted to make note of the fact that we do contribute annually to this very special day. Sykes Street reconstruction project is very, very close. It is open, the sidewalks are open, and they are going to be cleaning up the boulevards as we speak. So that project is done, and a month early. So very, very well done. Congratulations to all involved with that. Last week, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization announced the increased recommendations for the administration of a third dose of COVID-19 vaccine to specific groups of people in Canada. And we will be opening enhanced vaccine clinics here in Grey Bruce. So I'd encourage everyone to visit covid-19.ontario.ca for more information on that. This is applicable to seniors over the age of 70 and those with special needs. Our second Styrofoam Recycling Day is happening November the 13th from 9 to 12 at 87 Stewart Street. Just in time, because starting today, any expanded styrene placed at the curb for Miller Waste pickup will require a bag tag and will be included in the limit of 3 bags that are limited for disposal. So we encourage everyone to take advantage of this new recycling program and help us to make a positive impact on our environment. Just wanted to mention, the Deputy Mayor had mentioned Dragon's Den happening here this week, and as well, performances have begun again, and it is wonderful to see Good House. There was a Good House on Thursday night for the Wingfield performance, and it's just great to have this part of our culture back in full gear. So with the precautions still maintained with masks and double vaxxing, of course, but just wonderful to be back at Meaford Hall. And that is it for me. If there's any further announcements from anyone? Seeing none, we will move on to public participation. This is a part we always welcome the public to participate, whether through a presentation as we will have today, or through deputations on items on our agenda, or questions from residents as well. So we ask that anyone who wishes to participate in this manner let our clerk's office know beforehand by noon on the day of the council meeting, just so that we have some idea of who's going to be making a presentation. Presentations are longer in length and really must be presented to the clerk's office in advance. And with that, welcome Mary McTaggart and Mickey Cullen from the Meaford Creative Arts Association. And they're going to be telling us how they're using our community bursary. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
If you feel comfortable, you may remove your masks.
Okay, great. That's good. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Yeah?
Please
Okay,
go
well,
ahead.
Okay, so I've written a few things down. Would you like a copy?
When you're finished, yes, you can give the
Okay.
copy to the clerk's office, and that's great, thanks.
Okay, so we're here to discuss the bursary that we receive every year and to explain why we need it. First of all, the main challenge is to continue to provide a suitable environment to encourage creativity. And we have that here at the Terrace Room. We just want to be able to to stay here and be part of the hall. We are an all-inclusive club. However, most of our members are seniors. The club provides a safe and social outlet for many of our seniors because many of them have lost their partners, and it's one of the things they look forward to every week. It gives them an outlet. We like to support the Meaford Hospital by fundraising. The hospital is sort of our favorite charity that we like to fundraise for. We have in the past held several silent auctions. Our members have been painting and donating the ceiling tiles for the hospital, and then they are bought in memorandum, and that's how they, get the money from them. So we also support the fall fair with supplies, teaching time, and also a cash donation, which goes towards to support the youth categories at the fall fair. The bursary will be used to continue to stay operational so that we can provide an environment for like-minded people to meet for support and encouragement. Culturally, we exhibit our shows at the hall galleries, which encourages tourism. Most of our paintings celebrate the beautiful local landscapes. And COVID has placed some limitations on our activities, unfortunately. However, we will continue to do the best we can. And one day, hopefully, it'll be over with. And so thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation. And that's it. And if there's any questions, Mickey's more than happy to answer them.
Thank you for that, and we certainly do appreciate the work that you do to help our community and the wonderful outlet for artistic expression that does draw folks to come in and have a look at our gallery. So thank you for that. Any comments or questions from Council? Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, thank you. And just to comment, Mary and Mickey, it's really incredible to me the breadth and wealth of artistic talent that we have here in our community. It's just incredible how many artists that we have, and it's wonderful that you've come together and that you work together. And I don't know, all the art in my home is local, which I'm really proud of, and it's all really well done. And I just wanted to congratulate you and thank you and encourage you to keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you very much. It means a lot to us.
Well, I don't see any other comments to come forward today, but I'll thank you both for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Moving on to council inquiries. Anything from council today? Deputy Mayor?
Your Worship, thank you. I have two questions, if I may. The first one, at the recent public meeting in relation to the Centre and Union subdivision, we heard a lot of comments from the residents about speeding, as we're hearing all across our municipality, and I know that will be addressed when the site plan comes back to us for that subdivision. But I'm just wondering, in relation to our master transportation plan, at what point council may have the opportunity to discuss the potential lowering of a speed limit to 40 across the municipality?
Through you, Madam Chair, timely question, actually. I feel like the Transportation Master Plan identified a report in the first year of its life, so within the next few months, I would say early next year, that identifies lowering the speed limit throughout the municipality. But the goal of the report would be to address in town specifically first, and then look at others as well. There are some other municipalities in our neighborhood that are starting to do the same thing, so we're starting to have some comparators to look at as well. So I would say early in the new year, we should anticipate a report that would bring that piece of the Transportation Master Plan forward.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that, and I think our residents will be glad to hear that discussion is upcoming. A second question,
Sure,
if I may, Your
go ahead.
Worship. At our last Grey County Agricultural Committee meeting, there was a discussion, and I'm sure Councillor Vickers is aware, We discussed the Emily project, and it's a very sad story. Little Emily Trudeau lost her life in a farm accident because she was back in a field and first responders couldn't find her. So now there is a recommendation for farmers to purchase additional civic address signs for field entrances to make it easier for emergency services to find them should there be an accident. So the cost would be covered by Grey Egg Services. I believe in Meaford it's $125, if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm just wondering how we can promote that to our agricultural community so that they're aware that the signs are available and what the cost is and how they can recover those funds. Is there anything we can do to help promote that?
I think if there's a program through Grey Egg Services, then if they were to provide us with that information, that we'd be happy to share that. That is, of course, the fee for the entrance permit, but there may also be some comment about the actual physical entrance itself, because, of course, in order to have a 911 number, you do have to be up to certain standards for that. So, but yeah, if there's a program through a specific organisation, we can certainly promote it.
Okay.
Okay, good point. Councillor Greenfield and then Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, if I may, to Jessica. According to the weatherman, Jessica, over the next approximately 72 hours, we're going to have some potentially wintry conditions. I'm just wondering if you can reassure all of us that our trucks, if necessary, are ready to go. I don't think they're going to have to plow snow. I hope not. But I'm wondering about wet snow with slippery stuff, if we can get out, if need, with the sanders to look after any treacherous conditions.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's the S word that we don't like talking about, but yes, I saw the weather as well, and I can assure you that our staff and mechanics have been busy getting everything ready for the weather, so I think everyone's well ready for whatever Mother Nature is going to throw at us.
Good to know. Thank you, Jessica. And Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor or Deputy Mayor Keaveney. I'm glad you brought the topic up about the Emily project. Just to clarify, I think it's the Grey Federation of Agriculture that is helping promote it and to subsidize it, I guess, help pay for it. I myself had applied for two of these signs on my farm property, and after a lengthy and thorough conversation with Mr. Freeze, I came to the realization that it wasn't just the $250 that you had to pay to get the sign. There was also a $1,250 cost for the entrance permit. And basically this is what the issue was, and this is what the issue was with Jeff and myself, was I had to pay another $1,250 if the roads department came out and viewed the lane and looked at it as a proper lane, then they would allow it to happen, and that would cost me another $250. If the lane entrance wasn't up to grade, then I would be required to put a full entrance on the property. So it's something that I was going to maybe talk to whether it's the roads department or Rob with yourself, but it does seem like a bit more of an onerous task to get these 911 signs. And I'll be honest, we have a few farms without a sign on. So I was very interested in getting a 911 sign there, just for like what you said. If anything happened, then at least.
Obviously, that's a county issue. The county sets the sort of the 911 process. So we could look into that more and ask them to look into that. But the entrance permit fee is there because we need to make sure that those entrances meet our standards, so that when our wonderful infrastructure team is going to replace or reconstruct those roads, then we can do that effectively. And I'm sure Jess can explain that a little bit more than I can.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, and thank you firstly for bringing the Emily project to my attention anyway. I feel like it's good to know that these things exist, and it's great to be able to reference and figure out how we can maybe incorporate that into our processes. Like, I truly appreciate that. I think the best answer is that to stay tuned. Our asset management plan is currently being put together, and part of that assets obviously are roads. That is a big one. So right now, when we do pick roads for reconstruction or any sort of work in the following year, it is based on the SODI, it is based on traffic counts, so it is a bit of a calculation, which it might not seem easy to do, that's for sure. But the beauty of the asset management plan is that we will be looking at all of our assets and putting together a formal 10-year program starting next year. So that will be available when the asset management plan is complete. And if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be by June, correct? So that'll be a very public process as well that everyone will be in the loop on. So stay tuned for that information.
Thank you. Rob, did you want to contribute any note further on that? That's good. Thank you for that. Anything further from council? Seeing none, we'll move on to motions and bylaws for decision. 7.1 is our consent agenda. There are 5 items on this consent agenda potentially that we have seen before, and any one of them can be withdrawn from a member of council for further discussion. But the 5 are, the first one is CAO 2021-15 is a recommendation that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford advise the Joint Municipal Physician Recruitment and Retention Committee that the Municipality of Meaford does not see a benefit in continued participation in the committee. B is CAO 2021-18 is a recommendation that the council we direct staff to bring forward a yearly lease agreement with the SCP, Scott Clay Properties Group, for warehouse space related to the Infrastructure Services Department. C is Bylaw 2021-75, cost of living adjustment policy, is a bylaw to establish a cost of living adjustment policy to be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. D is another bylaw that the recommendation reads, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-76 it establishes a land acknowledgement policy, and that be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. And E again is another bylaw, 2021-77, is a recommendation is that this bylaw be established to govern the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford, taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Are there any of those items that anyone wishes to pull? And Councillor Bartley.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to discuss B just for a short minute.
Okay. Anything else? Seeing nothing further, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put A, C, D, and E as in the consent agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Bell and Councillor Vickers, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Kentner, sorry. All those in favor? And that is carried. And we'll move on to CAO 2021-18 is the lease with the SCP Properties. And Councillor Bartley, you asked to have that pulled. Will you move that?
I move that
Put it on the table. And is there a seconder, please? Councillor Greenfield. And you wish to speak to this, Councillor Bartley?
If I may. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rob, I was part of it when we sold the old building, and I'm trying to figure out why we sold the old building. And is that money in a reserve for a new building? And is that in the works in the near future? $40,000 a year would go a long way on a mortgage payment. I just was wondering what the plan is.
Yeah, through your worship.
Rob.
So when we sold the building, we actually have been, we took back the mortgage, so we have the mortgage on the property. So we have basically been staying there in lieu of the mortgage. the interest payments
Interest.
over the 5-year period. So we've been there. So when they pay off the mortgage, which will be before we vacate the property, the 300 and so thousand will be going into a reserve to look at that. This is an interim solution moving to Scott Clay. We are doing the facility rationalization study, and that will be looking at what meets our needs in the long term with regard to both the water division, the supplies, as well as the storage of the transportation vehicles, the sidewalk cleaner that is stored in those buildings. The rationale for selling the property is we felt that we had too much property, and this was a large property with a very small building on it that we were only using a small portion. And from an economic development point of view and facilitating business, it was felt that it would be better used by someone else and that we could look at doing a building to meet our needs on one of our other properties, whether that's the property beside the fire hall where the e-waste was located, Styrofoam now, or whether it's at one of possibly a rebuild of the sewage plant or another property. So we're looking at that through the facility rationalization. Interim use until we can get through that, and then our intent is to replace and be in our own building.
Thank you, and if I may, so what happens if the Clay building ceases to want to rent to us next year?
We intend to have the lease. The lease is pretty much finalized, so actually will come in bylaw at the next. As mentioned at the council meeting, we're probably looking at a three-year lease with a year extension on that. So although the resolution said yearly, the intent of the first would be a 3-year in term. So we wouldn't be without a place.
And hopefully we'll have a plan by then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything further on this? Then I'll call the question. All in favor of this recommendation? That is carried as well. Moving on to 7.2, items for consideration. Our first one is DEV 2021-37 and a corresponding bylaw 2021-78. The zoning amendment regarding the Blue Mountains-Meaford Townline. The recommendation reads, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-78, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 60-2009 of the Municipality of Meaford pertaining to 357306, the Blue Mountains-Meaford Town Line, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Bartley and Deputy Mayor, thank you. Are there any questions or comments for staff on this? Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship, and this question is to staff. Reading the report, there was definitely a lot of information in it, and a lot of information that I found useful, but in the community well-being paragraph, and I can just read it here, it also strengthens the landowners, staff, and council's knowledge of the requirements of the Endangered Species Act, enhancing collaboration of policies between the municipality and the MECP. So I've read the report. I would say I got a vague idea to what it means. I'm assuming a bit of this report is almost educational to try and explain to council what is all going on. So actually, Your Worship, I'm just looking for a bit more of a verbal report. I can read things all day long, but I don't always understand them maybe the way that the person's writing them, and I just like to get more information. I want to use it as a learning opportunity.
Thanks for that. And this, I assumed, is your first crack at this. Rob, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to the councillor. Fully appreciate that. I believe the reference there really is in terms of the background information that needed to be provided, right? So with an EIS as one of the requirements there, it meant that there was further analysis of the lands than we would have normally had. In terms of the, let's call it the procedures or mechanics of council review of this at this table in these public forums. I'm more than happy to look at how we can perhaps on issues that have some of these technical studies, that there is some short presentation provided perhaps. And 100%, being my third week here, I am not at a stage to give that further information right now. I would have to rely on our CAO because he would have been involved with the movement of this application through the process. But with that, I think I'm sort of asking for a question that we might clarify with the CAO on what those presentations might look like. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Rob, and we'll go to Rob A.
Yeah, through your worship, I think this is easily explained by the timing to which the EIS is prepared. In this particular application, through the process, it was identified that there's a significant woodland on the property. Should you wish to go into that area and develop in that area, you have to prepare an EIS. It's not the applicant's intent to develop in that area. So therefore doesn't want to go to the expense of preparing an EIS because they don't intend to use it. So what we're saying is, at this point in time, we're going to put a hold or we're going to freeze it. And if in the future, either you or a future owner wishes to go into that, just be aware that you have to complete an environmental impact study that studies the environmental aspects of that based on whatever you want to do. So, this person doesn't want to do anything, so it's hard to study something you don't know what you want to do. So I think it very simply is explained in that manner in this situation.
So it's for future development potential.
Yeah, and it just, when we say development, we don't mean a plan of subdivision. We don't mean it just someone wants to put a building in there or create another, something that changes the land. Because this is not an area that would see your conventional development plan of subdivision or anything.
Thanks for that, Rob. Back to you, Councillor.
So if I may, Your Worship, so I'm confused why it even came forward to council. So help me understand that part. Basically, I think what they're doing is they want to build a house and redo the barn or tear down the old barn and redo it, or there's something about a barn in there. Like, I guess I'm just confused. Why is it coming across our table in this manner?
Because they required, through your worship, they required a rezoning, and whenever you do a rezoning, the current policies kick in. So the old zoning didn't recognize that there was significant woodland. This is actually a matter that we picked up as part of our official plan update and our zoning bylaw update, where we have to comply with all current policies. But as soon as you invoke a planning process, you must account for the current policies that are in place. So in this situation, we had to, actually, I think this one has the EIS removed from a portion of it. So they're actually, the EIS was put on it and they did remove it. I guess I was mistaking this for another one we just did. I apologize. This is actually where they did have the EIS done by Neil Morris, and they are removing it from a portion of the property. And therefore removing the holding symbol from that portion. Yeah, I was confusing this with another one we did where we actually put the EIS restrictions on it.
Yeah, and Rob, I apologize for not giving you kind of an advance warning that I was going to ask these questions because it is hard to keep track of everything. Like I said, I read the report, I read all the way through it, I read part of it the second time, and it's like, I don't understand, because really they're just trying to build a house and really not develop it all, except for, because it's in rural, is it not?
So, yeah, through your worship, because of that previous situation where we put the hold on it till they did the EIS, so similar to what I spoke to, because at that point in time, nobody knew where they wanted to do it. So the hold was put on it. They now know what they want to do. They had the EIS done. Now they're removing that holding from that area because they've proven that what they're doing in that area won't have an environmental impact.
So if I may, are these holding patterns or holding symbols, are they easy to put on then, Rob? Like, does it come in front of council? Is it something the planning? So this did come before council?
Yes, council will, through an approval process, put the hold on, and then council lifts the hold. Correct.
And was this done a long time ago? Was it done before the term, or? And I just forgotten about it, or?
Yeah. I would have to, not too sure when that was put on.
2009?
If it was done with the parent bylaw, 2009, it would have been. It doesn't note an amendment, so it was probably when we did the comprehensive bylaw in 2009.
Okay. And again, I find these subjects very confusing, and I sometimes don't understand where our spot is as council. So, you know, I'm not looking to, you know, poke holes in it or anything else. I'm just, it's just something that interests me, and I'd like to learn more about it.
So are you okay with that, with the explanation now, Councillor Vickers?
I understand, and I understand the explanation. It's just like talking Greek to me, to be honest with you. It's hard to comprehend what our purpose is in the whole scheme of things. So, you know, to be honest, I just struggle what we're doing here. And I'm concerned all of a sudden we're doing something that I don't understand, and that's the long and the short of it.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Kentner?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. I think that what I took out of it was that the investigation discovered that there are bobolinks on the property, and the proponent is asserting that what they are planning to do, the very limited changes they're making, are not going to have any impact on the bobolinks. And our decision is, do we buy that, or are we, you know, suspicious of it? That's the question, I think.
Yeah, and through the worship, we don't, personally, myself, our staff, don't know that as well. So we are going to rely on the professional advice of the ecologist in this case, Neil Morris, and as well, we have an agreement with Grace Elbow Conservation Authority, who provides us advice on natural heritage and EIS elements as well. So if the Conservation Authority is accepting that, then typically we as staff are going to recommend that we do remove those areas and allow that to proceed.
It is council's responsibility to remove a holding symbol. If there's a holding symbol on there, it's because there's incomplete information. So that is our responsibility.
Yeah, I think holding symbols are used when there's a technical exercise that must be undertaken. If they meet the conditions of that technical exercise, in this case, doing your study, proving, then council has an obligation to remove the holding symbol.
Correct. Right. Thank you for that. And over to you, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm probably overstepping my bounds. I was just going to try to explain it in layman's terms. At the time, they didn't know where they wanted to build something or do anything. So through staff, council put a holding symbol on the whole property. Now they've come forward, here's where we want to do it, and we've proven that it's not going to affect the environmental assessment on the lowlands or the wetlands, so it's up to us to take that holding symbol back off. Is that correct, Rob?
Correct.
So we put it on because they didn't know what they wanted to do. Now they know what they want to do, and they've proven that it's not going to affect anything. It's up to us to take it off.
If I may, I find it, I'm curious how these holding symbols get placed on. And like, is there holding symbols all over the place that a homeowner, like even myself as a farmer, is there holding symbols on my property that I maybe don't realize are there until I go to try and do something?
Oh, for sure.
So
Is there?
holding symbols only get placed on property with the knowledge of the property owner and under a specified reason. So in this particular instance, what likely happened, because it was prior to my time in 2009, prior to our zoning bylaw, there might have been a severance back then, and they did the zoning bylaw amendment to put that hold on until they did the further study, which we now have. So I think it's important to note that property owners will know the rationale for those holding symbols. When we did the comprehensive bylaw, and just another one, on the 2009, we did an official plan policy that said along the shore on roads that aren't maintained by year-round by municipality, a hold was put on there to enter into an agreement and recognize that you're not on an open maintained full road. So there's just full recognition of that, and that's actually the next step file we have. So it's very technical access. You do the agreement, and then council will remove the hold and let you continue on with your development. So in that particular instance, it would have done, this is very site-specific, so it like was done in relation to another exercise.
Thanks for that. Back to you, Rob.
Through your worship, something that might also help council understand is that obviously council is very used to draft conditions of approval, right, with subdivision and then that. This kind of is a bit in that way in that it is a condition on how to figure out the challenge of the future, right? So as Rob was saying, that at the time, there wasn't an understanding of A, what was going to be proposed, and therefore B, what the impact might be. And so it set a requirement for doing a certain kind of study that could then provide that information. So it's kind of like having a draft condition, if you will, for an unknown that you still need to figure out. So in that sense, it's not too far off of what council might be used to. And again, they don't, it's not quite as common as what you would see with those other kinds of conditions with approval.
Okay, thank you for that, Rob. Anything further on this one? You're still looking confused. You're okay?
You know, and to be honest, your worship, like the holding symbol on the unopened road allowances or private roads, like Rob just used as an example, that seems very clear to me. I'm still struggling, I guess, you know, I'm still struggling a little bit to fully understand, and it's not this one in particular, but to understand the whole process of any of the holding symbols. The ones within the unopened road allowances or on private roads, that seems very simple to me. You have to say that you understand that somebody isn't going to plow your road, sort of thing. So that one seems very cut and dry. This one here just seemed a little bit more confusing to me.
Councillor Vickers, maybe you should spend a little time with our new Director of Development for further explanations. But yes, it is complicated for sure. All right, unless there's anything further from Council, I'll call a question. All in favor of this moving forward? And that is carried. And then we're on to another bylaw to remove the holding symbol, bylaw 2021-79. Is a site plan agreement and H1 removal for 151 Kiowana Beach Road. The recommendation reads, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-79 is a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan control agreement regarding 151 Kiowana Beach Road and to amend the zoning bylaw number 60-2009 of the Municipality of Meaford, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. I have a mover and a seconder to put that on the table, please. Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Bartley. And comments again for staff on this? Questions? It's fairly straightforward. Generally, housekeeping agreement exercise. Seeing no questions or comments, I'll call a question. All in favor of this moving forward? And that is carried. C is DEP 2021-39 is a request for exemption for 29 Lakeside Avenue. And the recommendation reads that Council of Municipality Meaford approve an exemption pursuant to Section 45 1.4 of the Planning Act to allow the Committee of Adjustment to grant a decision on minor variance application A14-2021, and that is applicable to 29 Lakeside Avenue. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Bartley and Deputy Mayor. Okay, questions again for Rob? Oh, seeing no questions on comments on this one, I'll call the question. All in favor of that moving forward, and that is carried. DEB 2021-40 is a heritage permit for 100 Sykes Street North. The recommendation reads that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve a heritage permit for 100 Sykes Street North to install a new fascia sign with embossed letters on a wood-grained or textured backing and in accordance with the Municipal Sign Bylaw 2018-62. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Kentner and Councillor Bell. Any comments, questions on this one? And Councillor Kentner, you're first, and then Deputy
Thank
Mayor.
you, Your Worship, and through you to our CAO, Rob. I just, if I may ask a question about the signs in the windows, not the sign that we've approved, but the signs in the windows. They're, I believe, covered by a bylaw as well, are they not?
Actually, I'll turn it over to the Director of Development Services because we talked about this morning, so he was just going to check into that.
Through your worship, yes, so as you know, the issue at hand is the fascia sign above the windows, and as the councillor has mentioned, this actually was the discussion also included issues about the overall storefront signage, including that which is in the windows. And so one thing I still want to look at is in terms of if there's any conflicts relating to this. What I would say is that there are, as we found out, and this is a little more complex, because this type of use, which is a marijuana retail store, they have strict restrictions from the federal government on what their windows treatments can be. Hence, when you see all these, they have opaque or completely blocked out windows, and then how that might relate to them also using logos and things on the windows. I want to make sure that we have an understanding of what that relationship is, that it's not determined by our definitions to be signage as well, and maybe in conflict, but that I would say is something that we can address independent of this application. So I would say that because then that would come under a bylaw or municipal enforcement issue, as opposed to something that is related to this application.
And if I may, my question is about our municipal bylaw, because from what I've heard, these signs in the windows would come under our bylaw. I do not know, have no idea how they would be passed by the federal legislation.
No, exactly, and that's why I want to make sure that what they have there does not conflict with what we have in the bylaw, and I just have not been able to determine that at this stage. And that would be, again, if council chose to, whatever council's decision would be on this matter, that is independent of it and would have to be dealt with municipal enforcement if it is something that is in conflict with our bylaw. But I can happily get back to council on reporting what the eventuality of that is, regardless of this issue today.
So, Rob?
Yeah, just to expand on that, we had this discussion this morning. Signage like sale or that you see in store windows is a bit of a gray area with regard to bylaw conformity, and that's why we want to check and make sure and really review the bylaw extensively before we deal with that. If we determine it's in conflict with the bylaw, we will take the appropriate action, but we're just not in a position to answer that one right now. Again, it really doesn't affect, what you see right there right now is their temporary sign, they're putting the permanent sign. There was great discussion at the committee with regard to improving the aesthetics of that by doing something with the lettering and the background. So the focus of this permit right now is the upper sign, as Rob had mentioned, and we will further review the enforcement matters.
Is the color the same? Yellow, the bright yellow on black? Is that still planned? What this heritage permit will allow?
Through your worship, yes, that is what there was discussion about color and some suggestions. And I think part of it will be, as they move forward, the challenge is that is essentially their
Corporate logo.
their logo, and it's part of the entirety of that kind of signage presence they're doing. With the recommendations that the committee came up with creating essentially a recessed relationship between the letters and then the back of the sign, and including a texture requirement on there. I think the committee came to a good recommendation that would likely deal with a lot of the sort of aesthetic issues relating to how perhaps the word might be stark, this might be, but again, the purpose of signage is to stand out, and the staff report also clearly identifies the relationship of signage to the Heritage District, and that it is something that is more temporal and changes over time. In fact, that location has recently undergone changes, hence the need for new signage. So it's not something that has a long-term or permanent, I should say, impact on the Heritage District.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Councillor Kenton, for asking about the windows. That was part of my question as well. And I guess I will admit I don't find the signage personally attractive, and I appreciate the long conversation that occurred at the Heritage Committee in relation to this. But I'm wondering, at least correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that we were moving towards encouraging the perpendicular signage, such as, well, just up the street, the kitchen, for example, has a lovely perpendicular sign. And I'm just wondering where we sit in terms of moving towards that type of signage in our bylaw, and how we could, as I say, encourages more businesses to go that route rather than something quite as bold as this particular sign.
Rob,
Yeah, through your
over to you.
worship. So the bylaw is permissive for both types of signs. The fascia sign, which you typically get, plus the perpendicular sign. So our sign bylaw allows both. I would say that through encouragement, our community improvement plan is likely good to fund those that we encourage, so the perpendicular sign. And actually, we just had a perpendicular sign application today for the new apothecary. Great. Love to see those downtown. They extend out over municipal property. We need to have the agreements recognizing the liability aspect, but it's something that we do facilitate there. Right now, our sign bylaw prohibits both, so we have to deal with both unless we do an update to the sign bylaw and remove the fascia sign and only allow perpendicular. I think you might get some significant resistance from the BIA, so we just have to maybe look at the encouragement sign and how encouraged a lot of times means assistance through funding. We have the CIP program that can do that.
Councillor Vickers.
Through your worship, I'm just curious to staff, if we're just approving the permit now, why is the sign up?
Through your worship, what you see there right now is a temporary sign that they put up because they need to advertise somehow. So they put that up temporarily. They're looking at a permanent sign, and that's what the application before council is today.
Yep.
So if I may then, Rob, back to you. My concern too, along with the deputy mayor, is the stark contrast on that. If that is the color combination they're using, how is that going to be softened or blending in more with a more heritage feel with what they're talking about, embossed letters or wood grained or textured backing? How is that? It's still going to be black and bright yellow on that black, is that correct?
Your Worship, yes, my understanding is that those are the color choices. I am not aware of any mechanism that we have in place
To
dealing
change that?
with the color choices. I'm more than happy to be told that I may be in error in that, but I have not seen anything that allows us to do that. I understand the sensitivity, particularly in a heritage district. Not so much that the heritage district is more or less important than other retail areas, but it has a design character, if you will, related to it that people are recognizing. But at this stage, I do not believe we have any mechanisms to address the color choice of the signage.
Might it be softened if it is done with on wood grained, which may give it a lesser stark black than?
I would, Your Worship, I would say that from what I was able to show the applicant during that meeting of other similar kinds of signs that, although they aren't manufactured the same way, but if you look at more traditional carved signs, which is the characteristics they're trying to go for, that by creating that relief, which creates shadows that are cast across the sign, and that it does tend to change that relationship, and it doesn't become so flat, if you will, and then stark. But again, I don't know how much that will change it in terms of any of the individuals at the table in terms of your liking. That is a design experience you have, if you like the color scheme or not. But again, I do not think that we have the mechanisms to control that.
Mm-hmm. Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, thank you, and I think I have the answer, but I'll ask the question anyway. Mr. Smith, for argument's sake, should council not approve this sign recommendation before us, do we have a leg to stand on?
Probably not. With my normal non-lawyer caveat, if the applicant has met the terms of our Heritage District requirements and meets the terms of the sign bylaw, and our staff are recommending that they have done that, then those are the things that you have set as council, and so therefore, yes, they should be allowed to do so. But I'll carry on, and perhaps Rob might correct me, but both of these are things that you as council have done. They are not things that are subject to a provincial Ontario Land Tribunal decision or anything along those lines. So council can always change their own rules, but doing so after the fact, when somebody's already been given the information that they need to comply with, would definitely be seen as being in bad faith.
Is there an opportunity to include the strong encouragement from council for a perpendicular sign as well at the, if this is approved? Rob?
Yeah, through your worship, we can reach out to them and suggest a perpendicular sign. I know you spoke of the kitchen, they have both. They have the fascia sign plus they have the perpendicular. So what
right.
This is the fascia sign, and we can speak to them about the possibility of a perpendicular sign as well.
Thank you. And Councillor Kentner?
Yes, thank you, and through your worship, just as chair of the Heritage Committee, I feel impelled to just say that here's an example where our Heritage District is going to suffer the results of inadequate provisions in our approach to protecting the Heritage District. So I'm not I'm a free enterpriser. But I am also somebody who appreciates so much the heritage of our downtown district. And I don't think this sign is going to do it anything to advantage at all. And we made that very clear as the Heritage Committee. And it didn't, if we don't have the rules in our plan to back us up, we're just going to see more of this and more of it. Thank you.
Rob?
So through your worship, just speaking to that point, as council's aware, we have embarked upon a required update to the Heritage Conservation District plan. So that's where this council will have an opportunity to review those policies applicable to new applications, similar to the council years ago who put those policies in place through working with the heritage consultant. So that process is underway and we'll consider it.
Thank you for that. And I guess it brings to mind, too, that there are always consequences that need to be considered when creating a bylaw, creating a set of rules, we need to be looking at all of aspects of it to determine what we really want to see in such a circumstance. So thank you for that, Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, can I get this straight, Ross? The Heritage Committee okayed this sign?
No choice.
I would say we felt that we had no choice, that our bylaws provide for everything that they wanted, and so we had to give it to them.
Well, the way I read it is the Heritage Committee okayed this sign. So I come into the meeting today thinking the Heritage Committee okayed it. If they weren't happy with it, they should have turned it down. So I had something more to go on.
I said we did not have the option of turning it down. I don't believe. Our rules as they stand now provide for exactly what they asked for. And our advice from staff was that you really are between a rock and a hard place here.
Like the last house that was being done, the Heritage Committee says you can't use Zim shingles, you can't use that brick, so you did that. Anyways, having said that, that's not where I'm going. I see nothing wrong with the sign, and I'm confused when the Deputy Mayor brings up adding up a perpendicular sign to it. How would that make it better? I don't understand that.
If I may, Your Worship.
Please go ahead.
In thinking of, a heritage community, and it's about the consistency, the conformity, and it's lovely when you go into other heritage downtowns and you see every shop. If I think of Alora, for example, and every shop has a perpendicular sign, and there's just a look to that that's very attractive. Right now we have, some with and some without, and as our CAO has suggested within the upcoming heritage recommendations, there may be a stronger recommendation for everyone to add a perpendicular sign. It just kind of denotes a heritage district. And yes, perhaps there would still be a need for that fascia sign, or they may still be permitted, but I think the eye is more drawn to those perpendicular signs as you're driving or walking down the street. So I'm just hoping that we can have further discussion about this, but the honest truth is there's nothing about this sign that I like.
Okay, just last comment. To me, I have no issues with the sign. I think the windows are deplorable. I think that's where Councillor Kentner brought his issue up, was the windows. The sign is okay for me, but the windows need to be something better done too. That's my only comment. Thank you.
And Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this is an example of, yes, we've had heritage planning for a number of years and had a heritage bylaw, but I think it's only been the last maybe year and a half that we've really started to get serious about heritage, about our heritage downtown and the buildings that are included. And maybe I'm a bit biased, but I give credit to the Heritage Committee for, putting their foot down and saying, hey, look, we've got to get this straightened out. We do need a lot of work in the heritage area on when we get to our official plan review or refresh, because I think we're going to have to decide, like, this is, okay, what do we consider a heritage sign for our main street? Are we looking at signs of 1875? Are we looking at signs of 100 years ago? What and what they're made of? What the textures, the size, so on and so forth. There's just so much to consider. This is, I think we have opened up a whole new area of concern and discussion. And this is just one example If we, I think the Heritage Committee, in response to Councillor Bartley, did what we could, but I think we did feel our hands were tied to quite a degree. So I think the best I can say is that I'm looking forward to some changes, and the sooner we get at that, the better it's going to be for our downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and to my fellow councillors who currently serve on the Heritage Committee, and I know Deputy Mayor, you were on it the last time. So, as an overriding statement on the Heritage Committee, the committee itself is a welcoming committee to this community, and I'm saying that kind of as a question and as a comment, because if people in business and other homes are doing things to make improvements and they wish to do something, is it the prevail of the Heritage to tell them what they basically cannot do? And if that is the case, how welcoming is it? Like I hope that they're a very welcoming and a pliable committee, because I heard things early on when this first came out, Madam Mayor, about the color of the brick that you have, you know, how bright the mortar looks, and yet we have got a brand new library, which is right in the core of the Heritage, and it doesn't have that salmon colored. What I'm saying is there has been some latitude given, and latitude which has been put in place. And I hope that the Heritage Committee listens intently to those that wish to do something, and they're not going to end up being viewed as a very restrictive and can't do committee. So on those light comments, I hope they're taken lightly, maybe from the current sitting persons, like the things that I've mentioned, you talk about these things, I hope, all the time.
Councillor, yes, Deputy Mayor?
If I may, I'd like to answer Councillor Bell's comments. Your Worship, and please jump in. If we think of a very successful heritage district, and I'm going to reference downtown Collingwood because they've won a national award in their ability to mix heritage with modern, contemporary. And if we look at our own Meaford Hall, the same has been done here with the addition of the glass component at the back for the, for the stairwell and so on. It can be done, and there's all kinds of buildings in Ottawa, and Rob Armstrong will remember when we were at heritage conferences there and the tours we were on, where they have done exactly that, where they've maintained the heritage look of the building, but inside it's very, very modern. The John A. Macdonald building, for example, which really caught my attention because they spent more money on that than our entire year's budget for one building. So it can be done, and I think we have to accept that that perhaps is going to be strongly entertained going forward if we look at our own main street, and should that be developed, the section that Mr. Tonzik owns between, the refillery and moving up towards the old Stedman's building up to the wool shop, that's likely to be some kind of mix of heritage and contemporary, and I think we have to get our heads around what's going to be acceptable. But as you speak about the restrictions that come along, communities have the ability to set those as being very, very strict and saying every front door must be painted heritage blue or whatever. But we're not nearly that restrictive here in this community. Our Heritage Committee has the ability to make some recommendations to try to maintain protection, particularly of our buildings, the brick that you've heard discussed on many occasions, and discouraging the sandblasting and so on that will damage the original buildings. But we are not at a stage yet, because heritage is relatively new for us in Meaford, where other communities have been really conscious of that and supportive of it and have invested in it for many years longer than we have. So we're we're not there yet, but I just think it's important that we continue to educate ourselves on the importance of heritage, and that we work towards being conscious of it in every decision we make that it regards our downtown, because that identifies us and it makes us a tourism destination. People travel long distances to come and see beautiful heritage districts, and we've got buildings that are so special, like more special than many other communities when you start to really look at the intricacies of our brickwork and so on. They are really, really beautiful. And I think it's, you know, it puts a strong onus on us to be ever conscious of that and to be protective of that. And I think that's why I just like this particular sign so much, because it just smacks everything that is not heritage, but we're stuck. So out of all that does come a question. I'm wondering, Mr. Armstrong, is it possible, because I know that you're going to be coming back to us with a change of recommendation for signage in our Heritage District. Is it possible to put any kind of a temporary nature on this approval today, so that it will have to at some point in time confirm with whatever the new requirements are going to be? Rob?
Your Worship, I don't believe that we have that ability based on, again, bringing it back up to our current policies that would dictate. I think what I would say, and I think it was said before, signs aren't permanent. They need to be replaced. They need to be redone over time, and you need to apply for permits when you do that. So, and you need to account for the policies applicable at that time. So I think that's, I don't think that we have the authority to issue a permit based on a temporary time frame.
I'd agree, Madam Mayor, and I think to add to that, again, because this is a locally mandated thing, council, if they wished, would have the option to not grandfather signs should things be updated and require organisations to update it, but then you would have to realise that that would apply to everybody who was covered by any area that you were defining as needing new signs. You certainly wouldn't be able to pick one business because you didn't like the look of that one and say that they had to do something different but others didn't.
Just a quick question to you, Rob Armstrong. In terms of the our community improvement plan, was this signage by any chance applied appropriate to that, the CIP? Was there any application for money for funding for that?
No, there was not.
There was not. I didn't think so, but thought I'd ask anyway. Thank you. And similar to our official plan, what is in play at the moment when the application is presented? That is what has to govern the approval of the application. So I think the assessment here is that the Heritage Committee took that under consideration and presented it to us in that vein. Back to you, Rob.
Yeah, I'd like to think the Heritage Committee did a great job here in consultation with, actually Rob, in what I would call a compromise. This is not the type of sign they originally wanted. You see it was just basically on there with the colors. I think what got presented was something that could blend in a little better than what they originally proposed to soften it through the lettering and the back
Wood
texture.
grain.
So I think
Yeah.
the Heritage Committee did do some good work in convincing them to come to a compromise with regard to the sign.
Rob.
Through your worship, if I can add something on that note as well. I believe, and it was expressed by members of the committee, that some of the challenges that the existing color of the facade of that storefront is also black, and it creates this very sort of monolithic kind of perspective, and takes away from some of the architectural details, and that was kind of mentioned. I will say, so not speaking on behalf of the applicant, but he noted that as well, that he'd be more than happy to get rid of that black paint, but that is an issue of the owner of the building. And the reason I'm mentioning this is that here's a gentleman who's representing this business who was saying that, they want to put their best foot forward. can't budge a lot on the colors of their brand identity, right? And they have just as much right as Nike or any other well-known brand does to set that, right? And I think we all appreciate that. But I am mentioning that because they were, as the CAO mentioned, in negotiation with the committee to trying to find that middle ground. And I believe that there is a gentleman there who is willing to continue that discussion, maybe for a blade sign, if there's opportunities for us to encourage that, and also over time, maybe some improvement to the color of that storefront that is more fitting. That gentleman seemed quite supportive of that as being, hopefully, as he had mentioned, a longtime business partner in our downtown. So I think that's worth noting.
Some comfort there. All right, is there any further discussion from council? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of this recommendation coming forward? 2, 3, and 1 against, and that is carried. Okay, bylaw 2021-80 is the appointment of a chief administrative officer. This seems a little curious at this stage. The recommendation is, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-80, being a bylaw to appoint a chief administrative officer, be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. And of course, this is a reference to when we did appoint Rob Armstrong as our CAO, it was in a dual role. And so with that, I will ask for a mover and a seconder to put this on the table. Councillor Bartley and Councillor Kentner. And I will open it up for questions, comments. Anything need further clarification? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor as presented, and that is carried. We have been sitting now for close to 2 hours, an hour and a half, and so I'll call a 5-minute, just a quick stretch. And we will return at 2:25. Thanks, everyone. We will now resume at 2:25 at point 8 on our agenda, and I will ask for a mover and a seconder to move into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Bell, Councillor Greenfield, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. So, the first one we have a CAO 2021-19, Alex's Gas Bar land acquisition request. And the recommendation reads that Committee of the Whole recommend to Council of the Municipality of Meaford, 1, decline the offer from Alex's Gas Bar to purchase a municipal property between the gas station and the Big Head River. And number 2, negotiate a lease with Alex's Gas Bar to utilize the municipal property for storage of U-Hauls, subject to provisions being in place to address the upkeep of the property. Have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bartley and Councillor Kentner. Okay, this is fairly straightforward. Good report. Any comments, questions to staff as we move ahead? Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just to thank staff. I think this is an excellent report, and it's a super opportunity for the municipality of Meaford, and especially for urban Meaford, to have the potential to develop the other side of the river as well, and make it a real attraction to the downtown core. So I think this is exactly the right move.
Thank you. We're, Councillor Kentner, just for clarification, the recommendation is that that property be leased to Alex's Gas Bar.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, clearly this provides an opportunity. In other words, we're not disposing of the property. We are, keeping it within public ownership. That is my point. Sorry.
Yeah, and I agree with that, certainly. Any other comments? Okay. Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to Community Services, COM 2021-23, the Wellbeing Advisory Committee, and the recommendation reads that Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford enact bylaws to, 1, establish the Wellbeing Advisory Committee and adopt the terms of reference as presented. Number 2, appoint members to the Wellbeing Advisory Committee for the remainder of the 2018 to 2022 term of council. And 3, appoint a member of council to the Wellbeing Advisory Committee and the Detachment Police Services Board when it is established. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bell and Deputy Mayor, thank you. Okay, any comments, questions? Councillor Bell.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor, and this has been in the works, as it were, for some period of time, and I know that all my fellow councillors have read the report, and it's the 3 main things: to establish something new, and to appoint new members, and to choose a member of council for this new adventure, as it were, that we're going to be taking on. I think we all can remember on council receiving a really in-depth report from a staff member, Hannah, who went through sort of the background of all of the stakeholders that have been involved in our community moving forward. And I think as far as appointing members, being the chair of the Community Policing Advisory Committee, Madam Mayor, first of all, I want to thank you. I can't recall a meeting of that group that you didn't afford some time to attend, and I really appreciated that. I want to thank Matt, also our clerk, who always pulled things together, absolutely organized, and Hannah, again, she was always there. I think I'll take this opportunity to thank those persons in our community who put their name forward, who were successful to being members of the Community Policing Advisory Committee. I think that this was something that they chose, that they wanted to be involved with, And I want to take the opportunity to thank them, those that have served in the past. Some moved on. We had some new folks join, and thank them very much for their participation. On a personal note, you've all read the report that this new profile will replace the Community Policing Advisory Committee. And I just want to take this opportunity on a personal note that it's been a privilege, and it was a real joy to be the chair of that. I have to tell you that I learned more about police and police work, whether they're the OPP or any other police force, what they face. And this new profile, policing will be one aspect of the totality of everything. I know that when we had our Police Advisory Committee meetings, whether it was an inspector or a sergeant, we got told many times about those social aspects where the police show up at a door, and it's something going on, and they were the first ones to admit if we can do something in society different where a uniformed officer may not be the very best, agency to show up, and they recognize that too. So this new group will delve into that very heavily, all the aspects in society, and all pulling it together. And like I say, the policing aspect will be only one portion of it. As far as the members to be appointed, I would just like to ask this council if they would extend their hand to the current serving members of the Community Policing Advisory Committee and invite them to make the choice to join this new one, but also let them have the opportunity, if they think or feel that they signed up for police only, that they may be able to step aside, that we're not going to force them, as it were, to just move on to a new committee, to invite them to do that. And as far as the appointment of council, I think we've got some outstanding members of council here that would serve as a real super representative of this municipality on it. So I like this. It's evolving into something that our community needs, our municipality needs, and we're not alone in those needs. So thank you for that. So I don't know, I've said a few things, Madam Mayor, but the one in particular about appointing and just asking those members if we can do something by means of a motion, that we actually extend our hand by invitation, and it's not just a rollover. Mr. Clerk, I expect you have some good thoughts on that. Thank you.
Over to you, Matt.
Through you, Madam Mayor, one very simple thought. We would never force anybody to do anything. We would always only ask them, so it'll totally be up to the members.
Okay.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I'm wondering if our member who sat on the Police Services Board would consider being the council member on this committee. Councillor Bell has mentioned about his experience with that board, and a great learning experience for him. I'm also thinking that his experience with the BIA would fit in well with this committee. So I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time or not, but if the floor is open to suggesting reps on this new committee, I'd definitely put Councillor Bell's name forward. Thank you.
Matt, do you have a procedural question here? How do we want to move ahead with this?
The way that we would normally do the appointment of a council member, and I think this goes with our appointments policy, is that should you move forward with this today before the bylaw comes forward on November the 15th, the mayor would canvass members of council to see who would be interested, and then the mayor would then make a recommendation in that bylaw, and then council obviously would have the choice as to whether to pass that bylaw or not. So I don't think we need to particularly talk about who from council will be a member on this today, but the mayor will, should you go forward with this, the mayor will be in touch over the next few days, I'm sure.
Thank you for that. And if I may just take the opportunity to thank Councillor Bell for your leadership on the Policing Advisory Committee as well. I think this is a natural progression because it was the policing issues and Department of the Province that actually brought forward the necessity to create our own well-being committee. Our plan, rather. And so this is just the natural progression of the work that was done on that committee, and following it up was one of the tasks that this committee came up with, was to create that advisory committee that would bring forward or respond to issues and the tasks that have been identified in that plan. As you've mentioned, kudos to Hannah and Matt for all of the work and the leadership on bringing this plan to fruition. Very, very comprehensive, and it bodes well for the future. So I think this is a natural step forward, and certainly I support it wholeheartedly. Anything further from council? Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you again, Your Worship. Just a comment. I did have some concerns about how this Wellbeing Advisory Committee would shape up with the existing Accessibility Committee. And I had a chance to converse with our excellent deputy clerk this morning, and also with Mr. Armstrong for a few minutes, and they both assured me that there would be room for both committees in the future, and room for collaboration and cooperation and support between the two committees. So that was very pleasing to hear. Yeah. Thank you.
Very good. Anything further from council? Seeing nothing, I will call the question. All in favor of accepting this recommendation as presented, and that is carried. Moving on to corporate services, COR 2021-51 as the infrastructure renewal fee policy and a communication plan. And the recommendation reads that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve in principle the introduction of an infrastructure renewal fee for unconnected lots fronting municipal water and wastewater systems. 2, direct staff to move forward with public consultation based on the infrastructure renewal fee communications plan. And number 3, direct staff to bring an updated report and policy forward for Council's consideration following this public consultation. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Greenfield and Councillor Vickers. And I will open the floor for comments, questions. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and appreciate the opportunity to speak on this one. I am glad to see in the report that there will be lots of opportunity for public comment and consultation and participation, because I suspect this is not going to be popular for those folks who do currently own a lot and will be facing an additional charge. So I look forward to the outcome of those sessions. But and I just wanted to confirm, as is suggested in the report, that whatever, should this come forward and come to fruition, that the monies brought in then would go against increases in user fees. So are we, first of all, looking at an 8% increase again this year in overall user fees? And would this be settled in time to have impact on those potential rate increases for 2022?
Over to Rob.
So, Your Worship, we're still finalizing the budgets, in particular the capital side, as it would apply, which obviously affects the rates. Council did approve a water rate plan that does guide our increases, and they do identify a certain amount per year. Our intent is that this will be finalized, and will impact, in a positive light, the proposed contribution from capital from existing units by reducing, you can see in there, the percentage of the potential unconnected lot charge as percentage of the budget on the capital side of 3.3% for water and 2.9% for sewer. So hopefully it can reduce the capital by that amount by introducing this charge on those vacant lots that are having the benefit of the sewer running by them and adding value to their lot by however not paying anything towards it. So.
Councillor Vickers?
Thank you, Your Worship, and just to have a few more questions about trying to help me understand how this all works. So I fully agree that that people shouldn't have this service available to them and not have to contribute or to pay for it. So I'd like to, if you can, give me some examples, or to give me some examples. So if we take, and I realize that these places, maybe it's not relevant, but I'd still like the example because they're ones I'm familiar with. So if you take One Legion Road, there is where the old Legion used to be. Used to probably pay the fees and everything else. The building was demolished, so would they have zero water and wastewater charges against them?
So through your worship, actually where a building was historically connected, a lot of the times they are still paying for that connection going forward. An example, the Meaford Haven development out the highway. There was years that there was an old garden center there. They had a water connection, no sewer. The use stopped existing, but they continued applying. Really, this is going to be applicable to where there's never been a use on a lot and has never paid a water and sewer bill. So it's more for those new type of uses that would be applicable. Or if they were discontinued, they would be recontinued based on just the infrastructure renewal fee.
Say that last part over again, Rob.
If for some reason, I believe the Legion, like others, have not been, that they're still paying that fee, we'd have to check that. But if they have discontinued paying that fee, then they would start paying the fee for one property until such point in time as they receive an approval for redevelopment. And on doing that, then within 2 years from that, and if they haven't built, then they'll start paying for, in the case of the Legion, we approved it for 150 units. They'll go up to 150 times that based on 2 years from the approval.
So can I give you a couple other properties I'm familiar with? The property directly north of the library, the vacant property there. Would they not pay any fees? In between what I would call Fisherman's Wharf and the library, there's that vacant property in there.
Yeah. Through your worship, that one might be, again, we're going to discover some anomalies, I guess the right word is, in that under the current zoning, no buildings are currently permitted on those properties. So when we take it to zoning, if you can't build a house, then how can we charge you to advantage? So that might be one of the properties where you actually don't have to contribute because of that aspect until you go through a planning approval, get your permission based on the floodplain analysis that was done, and then at that point you would have to start paying.
So if I'm correct with what you're saying, Rob, even if we do pass this bylaw or this motion, they may still not have to pay any because they technically can't build anything on that floodplain. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, yes. It comes down to, and it's specific in the policy, you have to have the ability to build on that property to be charged. So if you don't have that ability based on zoning, such as an environmental protection, then you will not have to pay that fee.
What about the north side of the main street on some of the buildings that are basically left empty?
Again, so if they were originally charged, they are currently being charged, or if they're not, they'll have to start paying the charge.
They'll have to start paying.
Yes.
Basically, they won't use any water, so that part of the rate won't be affected, but they will have to still pay that connection rate. So you don't know for sure whether they're actually paying that rate now? Or is that a question maybe it's not appropriate for open council?
Yeah, we don't like to specifically talk about individual properties and whether they are, but under this new policy, if they're not, they will have to start paying a connection fee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So I've got 2 or 3 items on this that within it, I know that even members of staff have said that there's going to be a further report far more detailed than what we have to consider at this point. But I tried to go through the mathematics of what was presented to us in the report, and I cannot come up with what the potential is for somebody who has a lot, who has water and sewer out front. Our report says that there's a probability of 210 lots and 50 of them would have only water alone with no sewer. So I tried to do math on that, trying to come up with, well, what are we as a council looking for then to get in a return? And I've had different numbers, and some of them were like $1,100, some turned out to be like $701. So I'm hoping that in the future we get an absolute number as to how many people use the system for water and sewer and what the percentages mean, because I tried to work it out with the percentage of 3.5% based on 2.9 million for water and 1.77 for the, and I still couldn't come up with what's the potential of what we're looking to glean from this ultimately. So that I'm sure will come in a report more specific in the future, because I don't want to vote on something and not know what we're actually going to be asking for payment. The other area I have a difficulty with is it also said inside the report, existing homes and existing businesses that are not on the system at all, but may have water flowing by the front of their home or business, we're going to start charging them. Now, to me, the people who have a well and a septic system are zero burden to the system that we have. And I know that this whole idea is getting more money to put in reserves because of the pressures that's going to come on us in the future for the development which is going to be happening. We need more money. But for people who've got a well and a septic system, they are no burden to the system. And I do not consider that to be proper to bill them after they have spent money on a well and a septic system, and you can come up with any numbers you want for that. I mean, most recently, I just spent like $28,000 on a septic system. So that to me is no burden. And the other one that I really do not like is that it's called a curbside, the ability at a curbside to do a hookup, so that even if there's just water out in front of your business or your home and you can't hook up, we want to charge you 50% of an entity that you can't even access anyway. So on those 3 things, looking for the money, what the actual dollars would be, potential because of the number of water users and the proposed 210 new ones, and on water or wastewater or water alone out in front of a current existing, because I do believe I read that properly, and if I haven't, please correct me.
Over to you, Rob.
Yeah, through your worship. So in the report, we've identified the potential recoverable of 96,000 on the water, 51,000 on the sewer. We have to still do the finalization. There might be unqualified lots. There might be these lots that don't have connections, and I'll explain that later. They get reduced by 50%, but that's the rationale on that. The no burden on the municipal system. Well, in fact, if that water and sewer goes by your property, it actually is in fact a bit of a burden to the municipality in that we have to maintain allocation out of both our existing water plant and sewer plant, depending on the service, for those existing unconnected units based on them fronting the system. So we do have to freeze that. They haven't paid a cent for it, but we have to keep it aside for those units. So to some degree, it is a burden in that way. Plus, having those water and sewer, whether using or not, running by your property, we continually have to maintain it, and it does add value to your property in having those there. So there's the argument on the other side with regard to that. One of the original, when this came forward to council, we didn't have the fact that if there is no clean out or shut off on the line for your property, you shouldn't be paying the full charge. We are proposing that we would reduce it by 50% for those people because you can't just connect. There's an additional $7,500 minimum per service to connect, so live tap into a water line or connect into a sewer line, that you will have to bear to connect to those services. So that's why we're suggesting that there'll be a 50% reduction on those lots, because it's not just as easy as running your line out, the connection's there. So that's what we're proposing, the 50% reduction, because we do realize there's that additional burden on them to connect.
I think, Madam Mayor, if I can just add to the financial part of this, we won't be able to give you a specific number that each person will be charged, because it's completely reliant on the budget that council passes. Because it'll be a share of the total capital budget for the year for both the water and the wastewater system. And so once we know exactly how many properties will be involved in this, we'll be able to tell you what it would have been in 2021, but we won't be able to tell you exactly what it will be in 2022 until council's gone through the budget process.
So Rob, do we have any idea how many homes on their own private well and septic that are on our water lines?
I think we've estimated, maybe Matt can clarify, 200 of the water, I think, approximately?
So we've estimated that there's 210 properties for water and 160 properties for wastewater in total that will be affected by this. Some sub-portion of that would be because they have their own private services. I know, for instance, there were some properties on Union Street that have private septics but are connected to water currently, and that's because they had septics there before the wastewater was put in along that street. So there will be some of those, but we can't tell you how many of those there are, because that's their information in many respects, and it's not information that we log in our system. All we know is that there is a house on that property, or a potential to build a house on that property, and therefore that's what we'd work on. As we go through the process of sort of doing the communication that's in the plan here, we would be able to get a closer handle on that, because obviously if there is a house there currently and they're not connected, that means there's private services there. But right now, that number of 210 and 160 is both the vacant land and the land that's already been built on.
My understanding was that from years ago, that in the Farrar area, isn't it, that's where there still are some homes in that area?
Actually, in that case, the issue there is there's no, on Farrar Street, there's no sanitary sewer for them to even connect in, so that won't even be applicable to them on the sewer side. I seem to recall in the Farrar that there is no, they're on septics because there is no sanitary sewer for them to connect into. I know we were dealing with some residents up there who wanted us to extend the sewer so they could connect in, so they didn't have to replace septic systems. But in that case, the other one I would add as an example, so we have the Pinehurst subdivision that is registered. Building permits can be pulled for 27 lots. We've had to allocate out of our water and sewer plant for those 27 units because it's registered, but they haven't paid a cent towards the plant and continue not to pay a cent. So they're not paying anything towards that. And I know that council has requested staff look at incentives for getting people to build when we approve plans. Well, this is one avenue that would be available to push that along.
Because that particular development has put a hold on our capacity. We cannot release those 27 lots on anybody else.
Yeah, through your merit, that's correct. Those 27 units are committed out of our plant and are being paid for.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to confirm, through you to Mr. Armstrong, you mentioned Farrar Street, and I believe Gray Avenue are on wells and septic. So is this the 50% group, or like the group that would pay 50% of the total, or how does that work?
So Worship, so Gray Ave, again, there is no sanitary sewer, so they wouldn't be subject to any charge for the sewer side. They're all connected, I understand, to municipal water, so they're paying their water. They're not wells, so as far as I understand on Gray Ave. So no, they wouldn't be. It's if there's a water line. An example would be my street, Eliza Street. There's water and sewer going down there. We recently created 2 lots off of the old Croft Ballpark, fronting onto Eliza. The water and sewer go in front of those 2 lots, but there's no connections on the water lines because those lots didn't exist when we did the water and sewer there. So they would be subject to the 50%. They wouldn't pay the full because there's no water and sewer, there's not a clean out, and there's not a connection for them to, a valve for them to connect into. They have to go into the existing services and create those connections, which comes with an additional cost. So those would be the 50%.
Yeah, thank you for that. And if I may, I understand our neighbors in the town of Blue Mountains have had a version of this for a number of years, and I think we all can see that it has not hampered building and development down in the Blue. So I don't really think it's going to have a huge negative effect on our municipality.
Councillor Vickers and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I, speak in favor of this motion. I think it's a great opportunity to help us encourage infilling. We've got all this infrastructure here. We need to use it. People have concerns about the rates that they're paying, and we keep hearing over and over again. Part of the problem is, we don't have enough people hooked onto the pipes. So I think this is a great opportunity, and even the 50% rule, now that I kind of understand it a little bit more, I'm not too sure, whether they should even deserve the 50%. Like, if they built a house on that said lot, they would be more than welcome to tap into the water and the sewer. So just because there isn't you call it a clean out, or I forget what the other word was,
A
connection isn't there, they have the right to do it. So I even kind of question why we're giving them the 50%. I think it would definitely encourage infilling and people not to speculate as much as maybe what's going on right now. So those are just some of my concerns that I have with inside the town limits.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'm just curious, Mr. Armstrong, are there properties that the municipality owns itself that would fall into this category of having services pass by that are not currently hooked up? Or are there any properties that organizations own that this could cause hardship to? I'm thinking about the fairgrounds just for an example.
I believe, to Your Worship, the fairgrounds are on the same property as the curling club. Our vacant property, though, as part of the fairgrounds, is all considered one. I guess we could look at that. We should treat ourselves the same as we go through that process, and we would need to take a look at that. That's a good one. I really never thought of that one. Actually, I think on the fairgrounds, the zoning doesn't permit any, I guess, open space, so it doesn't permit current zoning similar to the EP. So that may not be applicable, but we'll have to take a look at that.
Thank you. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, through Your Worship. I'm certainly, in general, in favor of this. I think it's very important. I've been alarmed for a long time about, the drastically rising costs of both the water and sewer services, and I just didn't hear for sure that this is actually the funds raised will actually, help lower those costs. I believe I read that they're going to go into reserves for capital projects, so that translates into reducing those, I believe, correct?
To Your Worship, they will reduce. They could do nothing but reduce. So if we have our capital program for the year, and if we have additional money coming in, then it's going to reduce the existing users' contribution to that. So.
And just a final point, everybody knows the difference between a lot for sale and a serviced lot for sale. So, thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to Deputy Keaveney's point, yes, the fairgrounds are zoned open space, so definitely wouldn't apply. The one that would potentially is the former Smith Tyre, because of course there is water going up that street and there would have been a connection there previously. That may change once it becomes a parking lot, because presumably that will be rezoned away from commercial or residential, but that's the sort of land that we're talking about.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Again, a real quick one. Does this apply to Leith?
Your Worship, the Leith was dealt with a little different in that people actually had to pay for their connections and are paying, even though if they're not connected, they still have to pay. And then we had limited number of connections. So I think Leith will be treated completely different because of the previous arrangement that was made.
They're on Owen Sound Water.
Owen Sound Water, but it's our water and sewer lines that we have to maintain, but I believe that they already had to contribute through a local improvement for those lines if they received a connection. So I think they were a little different than those in the urban area of Meaford, the former town of Meaford, where nothing was paid previously.
Okay. I'm seeing no further questions. So I will call a question. All in favor of this motion going forward as presented and against? Okay, that is carried. Thank you. Next one is COR 2021-52 to 2022/2023 MTO Connecting Links Program Application. And the recommendation reads that the Committee of the Whole recommend Council of the Municipality of Meaford approve the submission of the 2022-23 MTO Connecting Links Program Application for the Sykes Street North Structure 037 Rehabilitation Project. I have a mover and a seconder to put that on the table. Councillor Vickers and Councillor Bartley. And open it up for comment, questions. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess to Rob or Jessica, we're going to apply, and we're going to apply at a costing of $598,000. How recent is that costing? Because if I mind right, the last time we applied for money, they give us a certain amount on our costing. The price went up, so we didn't get any more. Is that true? I just want to know, is this a recent costing of $598 or?
Over to you, Rob.
I know that we applied, through your worship, this is similar to what we applied just recently and were denied last year. Those costings are quite recent. Unlike some of our other projects though, such as the one we just did on Sykes Street where it included water, sewer, and other components, this is strictly funding for something that MTO would be covering. So we're less vulnerable, I think, on the increase for other things that we would be picked up with. I believe when we apply, we look at current costing.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Armstrong, we're just curious to know, we've had so much construction in our downtown, and I always say to people, we're so fortunate that we're in a financial position to be able to do it. But I'm just curious to know, assuming, we go forward with this bridge, how many other sections of our downtown core are there still that need to be reconstructed?
Your Worship, I don't, in the downtown core, I think we're in really good shape now for what we've done for a number of years, bridges and roads. I think the Highway 26 section though, that extends from out by the MTO yard out to Ford Ave, there's probably other sections that we can get contributions for as well. And as we continue getting the Connecting Link program, we will continue to explore those where it's warranted to be required. But I think from the downtown perspective, I think we're very well positioned for what we've done in the last 10 years with the bridge, the downtown section of Sykes, and now the Collingwood to Lombard section. I think we're in pretty good shape in the downtown.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Vickers.
Yeah, through your worship, I speak in favor of this and not taking it lightly because I know the downtown has suffered, somewhat over the years, but, there isn't a whole lot of, there isn't a better way of doing it. So like if we don't take advantage of these Connecting Links programs, we could actually fund it completely on our own.
That's right.
Is that not correct?
Yeah.
So, it may be a bitter pill to swallow when it's happening, but you kind of have to go when the funds are available. So, but the way I read the report, at least next year it'll just be, engineering, and the actual project won't take place until
Till the following year.
2023. So, for people concerned about that, I hear you, but, we'll have a year next year. They'll probably have somewhat uninterrupted flow of traffic through the downtown core, but, we do need to keep up on this stuff because there's too much money on the table not to take advantage of it.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Mayor Clumpus, through you to Mr. Armstrong. This is Peach Creek we're talking, is it not?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, which can be very volatile depending on the type of spring. I think Councillor Bartley brought up a very good question. I'm looking at a couple of things that are somewhat conservation authority concerns. The gabion baskets and slope stabilization adjacent to the structure. Even though Peach Creek is fairly narrow, we have had some wild flooding in that little runoff, and I really hope staff double checks this 598. I mean, if I had $598,000 in my back pocket, I'd be very, very happy, but it doesn't buy you very much anymore. So please, let's just revisit that number for a few minutes and try to make sure that would be adequate. Thank you.
Okay, comment, Rob?
This is at committee. We can confirm those before it comes back to council in 2
Back to
weeks.
council. Good point. Thank you for that. Anything further? I'm not seeing any, so I'll call the question. All in favor of this application process going forward, and that is carried. And the last in this section is COR 2021-53, our reserve and reserve fund analysis. And the recommendation reads that the Committee of the Whole receive this report, the reserve and reserve fund analysis for information purposes, just as a reflection of where we are to date. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put this on the table. Councillor Vickers, Councillor Bartley. Any comments, questions? Councillor Vickers?
Thank you, Your Worship. And after reading the report, there seemed to be a little bit of conflicting information in there, and I think the insurance was maybe one of them that there actually are reserves or over, how would you say it? Needed, not needed, but over, more is in the reserve account than is actually required. So, yeah, just looking for some comments about that, because in some of the other reserve funds, I noticed really aren't pertinent anymore, and it'd be interesting and it'd be good to get it cleaned up, and because there's nothing worse than really having money just sitting in the bank right now. So anyway, looking forward to staff's comments.
Absolutely, Councillor Vickers, through you, Madam Mayor. I think this has been a really, really valuable exercise. Council obviously received the first report a couple of months ago. We hope that you'll get the last in December, if not very early in the new year. And I think it's been really valuable for us as well as for Council to go through these and understand what's there. When you read the report, the first sort of sentence or two under each one is really sort of a verbatim quote from the bylaw that was passed by Council whenever these reserves were created, mostly in 2013. And then yes, there's definitely some here where the amount in them doesn't quite match up with that. The bylaw that says, and insurance is an excellent example, the bylaw says the reserve shouldn't have less than 10% of last year's premiums, and it shouldn't have more than 40% of this year's premiums. Right now it has somewhere in the region of 65-70% of the current year premium. So that's obviously beyond the terms of that bylaw. I think what we've done when we've gone through this, and our intent is once we've assessed all of the reserves, our intent is to come back to Council with some actual recommendations. This has been designed just for information, but there will be something in the springtime that says, this reserve might not be very relevant anymore. The property standards one is the one that keeps catching my eye because it was created for a vehicle replacement. Well, we haven't done vehicle replacement in that manner for some years, and obviously now we're leasing as well, so therefore the money that's in there probably isn't very relevant to that. It might be as well that we come back and say we should actually move 100,000 out of the insurance reserve fund and put it somewhere else. Or we may say we should keep that there but not put anything more in there for the next 5 years or until we need to. So I think there will be some recommendations coming, but rather than do that right now with this, we wanted to make sure that we've got that whole holistic view first and then come back and say, here's some we could close, here's some we could change, here may be some we should open.
Yeah. Councillor Vickers and then Councillor Kentner.
So if I can just follow up, I guess after reading the report, you're kind of, thinking ahead of me there, Matt. I guess what I'd like to say in open council is that if we do bring these reserves back into budget or back into working capital, that we don't bring it all back into 1 year, because I don't want to see a lot of this money kind of being a 1 year windfall and then having the next year taxes go right back up by a lot. So I guess I just hope that staff will realize that we need to, as much as it's wrong to keep this money in the account, into the bank, that we don't want to kind of upset the apple cart too much by having taxes go up and down too much from year to year.
Absolutely.
Absolutely agree.
I think that's a really valuable point, and it's something we've talked about in budgets for years past. If we do make recommendations and council decides to do something different with the reserves, it won't be to take this out and put it into that year's operating budget. It will be to fund something that we have no other funding for that's a one-time expense, or to move money from one reserve to another reserve where we know we have much greater long-term needs. Nothing that we take out of these should be used to sort of diminish our ongoing operating costs for exactly that reason. We got bit, I think, was it this year because we used some money 2 years ago that meant we reduced the budget then, but then this year we had to cover the costs of that again, so we certainly wouldn't be recommending that.
Or to start a new project that might require future funding that would go into that year's budget. I think we have to be very careful of where that money goes.
So I think one of the reserves
point.
in this report that we did actually say what the plan is with it was the policing reserve. We've already talked to council about using some of that money for wellbeing implementation, and you had a report a couple of months ago sort of saying we'll use this much from reserves each year and we'll increase the tax levy by a small amount each year to get to the sort of the overall base funding in 5 or 6 years' time. And so it's possible to use some of this for things like that, potentially, to sort of slow down implementation costs, but certainly not just to avoid existing costs.
Yeah. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, through your worship. So I'm hoping that maybe not this time around, but the next time, we can shave 10 hours off of our budgeting because we'll really know what these reserve funds are for and where. But anyway, very quickly, I identified, the public transit, building services and property standards, almost $100,000 that are really, they're no longer germane, and so look forward to being able to, rationalize this. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Anything further? I'll call a question. All in favor of this moving forward, and that is carried. Received for information purposes. And so we're down to memos, and the first one is the Development Services update for November 2021. Again, very, very welcome to know exactly where we're at, what the status of everything that we have on our plates at the moment. So thank you. Kudos to staff for bringing that forward. Any comments from Council, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I did have a question, and I'm just going to say it's to Rob, and then whichever Rob wants to answer it can. The first point, the official plan review, just as chair of the Economic Development Committee, and we had had the opportunity to have a conversation with NPG, and at the last point we were involved with that, we were talking about the survey coming out this fall, and I see now that we're looking at moving that forward into early 2022. So I just wondered, for anyone who's listening and any members of our committee, if you could speak to the rationalization behind postponing that until 2022.
Through your worship, good question. There probably needs a bit more clarity in terms of, again, short format with the memo. Staff is currently working with the consultant as well as across various departments to what I'll call kind of realign the stakeholder and community consultation process. We're coming out of COVID. We have not only with my position, but generally some changes within the organization. There's capacity that's been raised. We are looking at the terms of reference, if you will, of the way we were looking at stakeholder engagement before COVID, and realizing that there's a lot of things now that have changed. The world has kind of changed out from under our feet, and we need to look at how we're going to reach out to people. So, in fact, at the next Economic Development Committee meeting, I'll be presenting some information relating to this. I think it's fair to say that what we're going to be doing is a lot more targeted outreach to various committees, to various identified community groups, a lot more sort of categorizing, preparatory planning engagement work with the broader community, hopefully some interesting discussions with the various members of council, and then launching the more sort of typical public engagement process. So we're really enhancing what the consultant had proposed. We're not exploding their terms of reference or their scope of work, but just now internally we're able to do a lot more. So some of this will be starting in the coming weeks, but we didn't want to sort of overpromise, underdeliver. For sure, everything will be running smoothly in terms of that engagement come the new year, but fully expect to be doing a lot of that other work in the last, 67 days, I believe, of the year. So it's really an enhancement and a realigning of what we need to address with such an important update to the official plan.
Rob?
And just to expand on that, so we had developed terms of reference for this, for the consultant to undertake the project based on where we were at a long time ago with other staff and other arrangements. So as Rob mentioned, we're in a different place going forward. In addition, I'm very excited about the opportunities that Rob next to me will be bringing to this. Rob has actually been a leader in the Institute on meaningful public engagement and has a lot of ideas in that regard. So it was a welcome update to the questionnaire, to the workshops, and how we will engage to make sure that it's Meaford is award-winning in that regard, I guess, if I could say it. Hopefully, at the end of the day, we can promote that the engagement we're doing is very unique considering these times.
That's good. Thanks for that. Anything further? No. And we will move on to updates from members to appointed to County Council. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. We did meet last Thursday for our second in-person meeting, and again, it was really great to see everyone and have opportunities to speak with staff. The first resolution passed was in relation to the new build of Rockwood Terrace in Durham. It was agreed to invest $75,000 from the redevelopment reserve into a comprehensive study to determine the benefits, if any, of completing the entire campus of care construction at once, or whether to proceed with a phased-in approach. The second concern to be considered is whether there might be a role for the private sector to undertake some of the risks and costs of that build. So we'll look forward to that report. Norm Sandberg, his name might be familiar, he did go to school here in Meaford, resident of Thornbury, is now a relationship manager for MWMO, Nuclear Waste Management Organization. He made a presentation to County Council to update us on the site selection process for a location to house a repository for the long-term management of used nuclear fuels. Originally, 22 municipalities applied. Meaford was not one of those 22. The list has been reduced now to 2, Ignace and the municipality of South Bruce. Uranium takes thousands of years to dissolve. It does not vaporize. Currently used fuel is being stored on site at Bruce Nuclear. A repository with walls 3 meters by 4 meters is proposed to be built 500 meters below ground to safely store the used fuel. A decision will be made in 2023 as to whether Ignace or South Bruce will house the facility. The community must be a willing host, and that's very important. There's been a lot of public engagement in both of those communities. Construction could take up to 10 years. This is a $26 billion with a B dollar project in 2021 dollars. The inauguration of the Warden for Grey County for 2022 will take place on December the 7th at 11 a.m. Councillors will vote via an online poll as we did last year. There will not be a reception with guests, as is the normal protocol because of COVID restrictions. However, there will be an appropriately spaced lunch for members of council. As far as we know, there are 2 candidates for Grey County Warden, Christine Robinson, Mayor of West Grey, and Selwyn Hicks, Deputy Mayor of Hanover, who will be seeking a 3rd term. I will be seconding the nomination for Mayor Robinson. There was considerable discussion regarding the staff report on stone dusting the Grey County Rail Trail between Markdale and Dundalk. The quandary was whether to dig into reserves for $513,917 to complete the entire section of trail, which is 35 kilometers, or to undertake just 20 kilometers at this time. A grant of $201,000 has been received for this purpose. The project is development charge eligible. It was agreed through a recorded vote to complete the full 35 kilometers. Otherwise, it could be a long while before we could afford as a county to complete the remaining 15 kilometers. Following the regular meeting, members of council were taken on a tour of the Sydenham campus. The old Sydenham School was purchased for $500,000 before COVID by the county. Our economic development staff have worked very hard on this project, undertaking everything from cleaning washrooms to painting to getting this facility ready. It now houses Y Employment Services, Catapult Grey Bruce, the Business Enterprise Center, Skills Advance Ontario Training, and much more, all facilitated by Grey County ECDEV. The day ended with a public meeting where Hempson presented the draft development charges study. Development charges are the fees imposed upon development to pay for growth-related capital costs. The most significant component of the county capital program is roads related. 94% of development charges collected go towards roads. Residential rates are proposed to increase from $7,524 to $8,968, a 19% increase. Rows and semis to $6,428, and apartments to $5,157. And that's it for me, Your Worship, unless you wish to add anything.
Thank you. No, that's a good report. An interesting day.
It was.
Moving on to other committees, and Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and ask Councillor Vickers to help me with this. Grey Salvo Conservation Authority did meet last Wednesday afternoon. We did award a small tender for some harvesting, and unfortunately, prices for wood products have decreased the last couple of years, noticeably, which is so strange with the huge demand for lumber and just about any kind of building materials out there, and the huge prices that retailers are charging. But anyway, it will help. One of the big items was the presentation of our budget for 2022, and I understand that's being distributed to all the municipalities in the authority. Council members here will be getting a copy of that maybe on our next agenda. I'm not sure, but the board, the authority did approve as a 4.6% increase. Now that's tentatively. That's not a final approval. That would mean about an increase of about $11,000 to our municipality, which would put us at about $210,000 for next year's levy payment. I'm sure all of our council members are somewhat familiar with the admin building over in Georgian Bluffs. It's a somewhat unusually shaped building. Was great back in the late 1970s. Was very innovative and very modernistic, but it has had its aging pains, and we went for an RFP for design improvements. We got 3 bids, and I thought they were a little suspicious in the amounts. I think they ranged from $33,000 to $120,000, which in itself seems strange. So we're going to ask to do that again. And I guess the other important part of the meeting, which I can only comment on very briefly, is that we did our CAO evaluation. Paul, I expect I've missed a few things. If you can help me.
No, Harley, you always ace this report. I'm always amazed what you remember from the meeting, what I remember from the meeting, and you're better off to use your memory than mine. The only other thing was that there was talk about we put a tender out for an electric car, and Elantra couldn't fulfill the tender. So they wanted to go back, and so they weren't satisfied with a hybrid car. They want a full electric car. So that's going to be a bit of a milestone for the Conservation Authority to go back. So they seem quite determined to get the electric car, but I guess we'll see what the tenders come back at. So.
Thank you, gentlemen. And anyone else? I know Councillor Bell, BIA. Do you have anything you want to report?
Well, Madam Mayor, I think maybe my report on the BIA will be an encouragement to people to come out to the BIA. We didn't have quorum again. We've had a couple of times when that has happened, and I think maybe you've seen through some emailing that kind of aspect. So it's very important to be involved, and to the folks that have the BIA close to their heart and close to their business, is to encourage you to come out. Because without that, I literally have really no report, because anything we talked about was only just for means of conversation, and we couldn't vote on a thing.
That's too bad. And is that it for no one else? Okay. We'll move on then to a motion to move out of committee of the whole, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Greenfield, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on to Councillor motions. Are there any notices of motion to come forward? Seeing none, we have one for decision, and from Deputy Mayor Kiowana for Employee Assistance Program participation. I'm assuming, Councillor or Deputy Mayor, that you will move that. Is there a seconder for this motion? And Councillor Vickers, thank you. Over to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I appreciate that, Your Worship. Thank you. It's a short motion, so I'll read it for anyone listening. Whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the need for mental health supports across all sectors of the population, and whereas the municipality of Meaford currently has an employee assistance program that offers mental health support, among others, for current employees, and whereas the members of council are not currently part of the EAP program, and whereas staff estimate that it would cost approximately $200 per year to add council to the EAP program, therefore be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby directs staff to register members of council for the Employee Assistance Plan and include the associated costs in the draft 22 operating budget. And just further to that, if I may, Your Worship, just for the information for members of council, if any one of us was to choose to take advantage of this program, there would not be an additional cost to the municipality or to ourselves to take the opportunity to call on a professional in this regard. And I believe, Mr. Smith will speak to this, but I believe, Matt, should we choose to pass this motion today, will then provide information to each of us with contacts and so on when the time is right as to how we might go forward and take the opportunity to utilize the plan.
Absolutely. If you
Matt.
pass this motion, we'll get you registered at the first possible opportunity. That may be the 1st of December or rather than immediately, I don't know. But once we do, you'll get the same information pack that all of our staff get.
Thank you for that. Questions? Councillor Kentner?
Yes, through your worship, just a question. Would this apply to all members of council?
Yes.
Because most benefits do not.
I'm not aware that there is an age limit related to the EAP program because it doesn't sort of bring with it any specific things that will be affected by that.
Okay.
Councillor Greenfield?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a hypothetical question for Mr. Smith, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Okay, assuming council passes this notice of motion today, and assuming that the employee assistance plan is included in the 2022 budget, that would provide mental health supports for council members. And assuming that a couple of years after a certain current council member was no longer on council, came down with some mental health problems, depression, and this councillor happened to claim that, hey, these problems go back to when I was on council. Okay, Mr. Smith, can you, in a hypothetical move, can you provide assistance for such a problem?
It's a good question to ask at this moment, Councillor Greenfield, because I happen to be logged into our budget software, which means I can double check what I'm about to say while I'm saying it. Councillors are not, he says, waiting 1 second. Councillors are not covered under WSIB, and the sorts of claims that you're talking about will be a WSIB claim. So no, the municipality couldn't be held at fault. The EAP program is really designed just to give some assistance. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be anything about work either. It can be about whatever you've got going on in your home life. The EAP is a really good program that you can reach out to and not necessarily get advice or solutions immediately, but they'll certainly be able to point you in the right directions.
Okay, thank you. I just thought I would ask.
Anything further? And I will call the question. All in favor of this motion as presented, and that is carried. Moving on to the adoption of the minutes. The planning meeting of October the 4th. I have a motion, mover and a seconder, please. Put that on the table. Councillor Bartley, Councillor Vickers. Any comments, questions on this? All in favor? And that is carried. And the council meeting of October the 18th. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Greenfield. Any comments, questions? Councillor Vickers, no? No? All in favor? You were ahead of me there.
Anticipating.
And the closed meeting of October the 18th as well. Mover and a seconder, please, Councillor Bell and Councillor Kentner. And we'd have to go into closed if there were any comments. Are there any comments, questions? No? All in favor? And that is carried. Anything on the communications list that anyone would like to bring forward? And Councillor Vickers.
Number C has been highlighted. Is there a reason for that? Because I read the resolution and I struggled to understand what Grey Highlands was asking for.
Is no.
I didn't know whether staff had brought this forward, or I thought this is how it kind of worked.
No, so, and this is a bit of a weird sort of protocol-y one. Normally, resolutions that we get from other municipalities, we put on your communications list, so you see them on the correspondence list, so you see them differently. However, when it's a resolution from a municipality within Grey County, we put them on the agenda specifically. So that's the only reason that that's been put on there, is that because it came from one of our neighbours.
That's all. Okay. Okay, then that brings us to the end of our prepared agenda, and I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much, everyone. At 3:36.